The Silent Millionaire, the hidden path to building wealth in private. Introduction. Wealth speaks the loudest when it is built in silence. In a world obsessed with showing, posting and proving, the real builders move differently. They do not rush to display progress, nor do they seek applause for every step forward. Instead, they focus on something far more powerful: quiet, consistent accumulation that compounds over time and transforms their lives without noise. The silent millionaire is not a myth. It is a mindset, a discipline, and a way of living that separates those who appear successful from those who truly are. While others chase attention, the silent builder chases control over time, choices, and future. While others upgrade their image, the silent builder upgrades their foundation. And while the world watches the loud, it is the quiet who often win. This audiobook is not about shortcuts, hype, or overnight success. It is about understanding the deeper game of wealth, the kind that is built patiently, protected wisely, and expanded without unnecessary attention. It is about becoming someone who no longer needs validation to stay committed, someone who understands that real growth happens away from the spotlight. In this audiobook, we will break down the principles, habits, and mental shifts required to build wealth in private. You will learn how to think differently, act deliberately, and design a life where money works quietly in the background while you focus on what truly matters. This is your invitation to step away from the noise and into a path that is calm, focused, and powerful. A path where results speak louder than words, and where your progress is measured not by attention, but by transformation. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop announcing, start accumulating. Every time you announce a goal, you release a small part of the energy required to achieve it. It feels productive in the moment. It feels like progress. You say you're going to save more, invest smarter, build something meaningful. People nod, some even praise you, and for a brief second you feel accomplished. But nothing has actually been built yet. No wealth has been created, no system has been put in place. What you experienced was not progress, it was the illusion of progress. The silent millionaire understands this at a deep level. They know that talking about plans is easy, but executing them quietly is where real power lies. Instead of seeking validation, they protect their intentions. They treat their goals like seeds planted underground. You don't dig up a seed every day to show people it's growing. You water it, you protect it, and you trust the process. The same principle applies to wealth. The moment you stop announcing and start accumulating, everything begins to shift. There is also a hidden danger in sharing too much too soon. When you constantly talk about what you're going to do, your brain starts to confuse intention with achievement. It rewards you with a sense of satisfaction without requiring real effort. This is why so many people feel busy but remain stuck. They are addicted to the feeling of talking, not the discipline of doing. The silent builder avoids this trap entirely. They don't need to feel productive, they need to be productive. You may notice something interesting when you begin to move in silence. Your focus sharpens. Without the distraction of explaining your plans to others, you start directing that energy inward. Decisions become clearer, actions become more deliberate. You stop performing and start building. This is where accumulation begins, not just of money, but of discipline, clarity, and control. Another advantage of silence is protection. Not everyone needs to know what you are building. Some people doubt, some compare, and others unintentionally distract you. Even well-meaning opinions can pull you off course. When your plans are exposed too early, they become vulnerable. But when you move quietly, you create a space where your ideas can grow without interference. You give yourself the freedom to make mistakes, adjust and improve without pressure. This does not mean you isolate yourself or never share anything. It means you become selective. You learn the difference between sharing for connection and sharing for validation. The silent millionaire shares results, not intentions. They let their progress speak when it is real, not when it is imagined. And even then, they do so with restraint, because they understand that wealth is not something to be displayed, it is something to be managed. As you begin this journey, you will feel the urge to announce. It is natural. You want recognition, encouragement, and accountability. But true accountability does not come from others. It comes from your own standards. It comes from doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching, start small. Instead of telling people you're going to save money, quietly begin saving. Instead of announcing a new income stream, quietly build it. Instead of talking about investing, start learning and putting small amounts to work. Let your actions replace your words. Let your consistency replace your promises. Over time, something powerful will happen. You will begin to trust yourself more, not because you said you would do something, but because you actually did it. This self-trust becomes the foundation of everything else. It strengthens your discipline, it sharpens your decision-making, and most importantly, it builds momentum, the kind that doesn't need approval to continue. Silence is not weakness, it is control. It is focus. It is strategy. When you stop announcing and start accumulating, you remove distractions, protect your energy, and align yourself with the kind of behavior that builds real wealth. You move from being someone who talks about success to someone who quietly creates it. And in time, when the results begin to show, you won't need to say much at all. Your life will speak for you. Chapter 2. Build your first invisible dollar. Wealth does not begin when you earn a large amount of money. It begins the moment you decide that not every dollar you earn is meant to be spent. That decision is quiet, almost unnoticeable, but it changes everything. The first invisible dollar is not about its size. It could be small, almost insignificant in the eyes of others. But what it represents is powerful. It is the first time you choose ownership over consumption, control over impulse, and future over the present moment. Most people live in a cycle where money flows in and immediately flows out. Income comes, expenses follow, and nothing remains. It feels normal because it is common, but it is also the reason wealth remains distant. The silent millionaire breaks this pattern early. They understand that wealth is not built from what you earn, but from what you keep and grow. And that process begins with a single decision: to make $1 invisible. An invisible dollar is a dollar that leaves your spending life and enters your wealth life. It is no longer available for impulse purchases, temporary pleasures, or unnecessary upgrades. It is assigned a new role. It becomes a worker. It is now responsible for building something beyond its original value, and once a dollar is given this purpose, it should not be called back for ordinary use. This separation is what creates the foundation of wealth. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. You might think that saving or investing small amounts does not make a real difference. The mind often looks for big changes, dramatic results, and immediate rewards. But the truth is, wealth rarely begins with something dramatic. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, just like that first dollar. What matters is not the amount, but the behavior, because once the behavior is established, the amounts naturally grow over time. When you build your first invisible dollar, you are doing more than saving money. You are redefining your relationship with it. You are no longer someone who simply earns and spends. You become someone who directs, controls, and assigns purpose. This shift in identity is far more valuable than the dollar itself, because once you see money differently, you begin to act differently, and those actions repeated consistently create results that compound far beyond what you can initially imagine. There is also a psychological strength that comes from knowing you are building something quietly in the background. Even if no one else sees it, you know it exists. It gives you a sense of control and stability. You are no longer entirely dependent on your next paycheck. You are creating a layer of security that grows over time. This quiet confidence is one of the defining traits of the silent millionaire. It is not loud, but it is deeply powerful. As you continue to build, each invisible dollar adds to the next. They begin to form a system, a structure that supports you rather than drains you, and over time, these dollars start to multiply. Not because of luck, but because they were given the chance to grow. This is where many people miss the opportunity. They never allow their money to stay long enough to work. They interrupt the process too early, pulling it back into consumption before it has a chance to expand. Patience plays a critical role here. The first invisible dollars may not show immediate results. You might not feel significantly different in your daily life, but something important is happening beneath the surface. You are building a habit, a discipline that becomes stronger with each repetition. And just like any skill, it becomes easier over time. What once felt like a sacrifice begins to feel natural. It is also important to understand that invisible does not mean inactive. These dollars should be placed where they can grow, whether through saving systems, investments, or opportunities that increase their value. The goal is not to hide money, it is to position it, to place it in environments where it can quietly expand without constant attention. This is how wealth begins to take on a life of its own. As you move forward, resist the urge to measure your progress by external standards. The world often celebrates visible success, expensive purchases, upgraded lifestyles, outward signs of wealth. But the silent millionaire measures progress differently. They look at what is being built behind the scenes. They focus on what is growing, not what is being shown, because they understand that true wealth is not about appearance, it is about accumulation. Your first invisible dollar is not just the beginning of your financial journey, it is the beginning of a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new way of living. It marks the point where you stop participating in the cycle and start stepping outside of it. And once you take that step, no matter how small it may seem, you are no longer where you used to be. From that point on, every additional dollar you make invisible strengthens your position. It increases your control. It builds your future quietly, steadily, and powerfully. And over time, what started as something small and unseen becomes something significant and undeniable. Because in the end, wealth is not built in a moment of visibility. It is built in thousands of quiet decisions, repeated consistently, long before anyone notices. Chapter 3. Kill the need to be seen. The desire to be seen runs deeper than most people realize. It influences how you spend, how you speak, and even how you define success. It is not always obvious, but it quietly shapes decisions in ways that pull you away from real progress. You buy things not because you need them, but because they signal something. You share updates, not because they matter, but because they get attention. Over time, this need becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a barrier between you and the life you are trying to build. The silent millionaire understands that the need to be seen is one of the most expensive habits a person can have. It costs money, focus, and direction. When your actions are driven by how they will be perceived, you stop making decisions based on what actually works. You begin performing instead of building, and performance, no matter how convincing it looks from the outside, does not create lasting wealth. Killing the need to be seen does not mean you disappear from the world. It means you detach your identity from external recognition. You no longer measure your progress by how many people notice it. You measure it by how much control you are gaining, how much discipline you are building, and how consistent your actions have become. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything, because once you stop chasing attention, you free up energy to focus on what truly matters. There is a certain freedom that comes with moving without the pressure of being watched. You are no longer trying to impress anyone. You are no longer comparing your timeline to someone else's. You begin to operate at your own pace, guided by your own standards. This is where real growth happens, not in moments of visibility, but in the quiet, consistent effort that no one sees. Many people fear this kind of invisibility. They associate being unseen with being unimportant. But the silent millionaire sees it differently. Being unseen is not a disadvantage, it is an advantage. It gives you space to make mistakes without judgment. It allows you to experiment, adjust, and improve without pressure. It protects your focus from unnecessary distractions, and most importantly, it keeps your attention on the process rather than the reaction. Social comparison is one of the strongest forces that feeds the need to be seen. When you constantly observe what others are doing, it becomes easy to feel behind or inadequate. You start chasing milestones that were never meant for you. You spend money to match lifestyles that are not aligned with your goals, and in doing so, you move further away from building something real. The silent millionaire steps out of this cycle. They understand that comparison distorts reality. What you see is often curated, incomplete, and temporary. What matters is what you are building privately, not what others are displaying publicly. Another important shift is learning to find satisfaction in progress itself, rather than in recognition. When your motivation comes from within, it becomes more stable. It does not depend on likes, comments, or approval. It is fueled by a deeper understanding of what you are working toward. This kind of motivation is quieter, but it is far more reliable. It keeps you moving even when no one is watching, even when there is no immediate reward. As you begin to let go of the need to be seen, you may notice a sense of discomfort at first. It can feel unfamiliar to stop sharing, to stop seeking reactions, to stop proving yourself, but that discomfort is part of the transition. It is the space where a new identity is being formed. An identity that is not dependent on external validation, but grounded in internal confidence. This does not mean you will never share your success. It means that when you do, it will come from a place of completeness, not from a need to fill a gap. You will share because you choose to, not because you need to. And even then, your focus will remain on what you are continuing to build, not on what has already been done. Killing the need to be seen also strengthens your discipline. When no one is watching, your actions become a true reflection of your character. There is no audience to perform for, no expectations to meet. It is just you and your standards, and in that space, you either follow through or you don't. This is where real self-respect is built. Not in public moments, but in private consistency. Over time, this way of operating becomes natural. You stop feeling the urge to announce, to display, to prove. You become more focused, more deliberate, and more grounded. Your decisions are no longer influenced by how they will look, but by how they will serve your future, and that clarity allows you to move forward with greater precision. The silent millionaire does not need to be seen to feel successful. They know that what they are building is real, whether anyone notices or not. They understand that attention is temporary, but structure is lasting, and they choose to invest in what lasts. When you truly let go of the need to be seen, you step into a different way of living, a quieter, stronger, more controlled way. One where your progress is not interrupted by the noise of the outside world. One where your energy is fully directed toward building, not performing. And in that silence you begin to grow in ways that are not only more effective, but also more meaningful. Because you are no longer chasing visibility. You are building something that does not depend on it. Chapter 4. Redefine what rich really means. The definition of being rich has been quietly distorted. It has been reduced to appearances, expensive cars, large houses, visible upgrades, and a lifestyle that looks impressive from the outside. But appearance is not wealth. It is often the opposite. Many people who look rich are carrying invisible pressure, obligations, and financial strain that keeps them trapped in a cycle of earning and spending. What looks like success is sometimes just a well-maintained illusion. To build wealth in silence, you must first redefine what being rich truly means, because if your definition is based on what others can see, your decisions will always be influenced by external expectations. You will spend to maintain an image, upgrade to match others, and chase a version of success that never feels complete. But when your definition shifts inward, your behavior begins to change. You stop asking, "How does this look?" and start asking, "What does this build?" Real wealth is not about what you display, it is about what you control. It is the ability to make decisions without being forced by financial pressure. It is having time that is not entirely traded for money. It is the freedom to walk away from situations that do not serve you. These are not things that can always be seen, but they are deeply felt, and they are far more valuable than any visible symbol of success. The silent millionaire builds toward this kind of wealth. They are less concerned with looking successful and more focused on becoming secure, stable, and independent. They understand that every financial decision either increases or decreases their level of control. Spending for appearance may create a moment of satisfaction, but it often reduces long-term freedom. On the other hand, investing quietly may not be noticed, but it steadily expands their options. There is a powerful shift that happens when you begin to value control over consumption. You start to see money differently. It is no longer something to be used immediately, but something to be directed strategically. You begin to think in terms of long-term outcomes rather than short-term udovольствия, and this changes not only your financial life, but your overall sense of stability. It is also important to recognize that true wealth often looks simple. It does not need constant upgrades or attention. It is stable, steady, and sustainable. It does not rely on maintaining a certain image. In fact, many people who are quietly wealthy choose to live in ways that appear modest, not because they cannot afford more, but because they understand the value of keeping their lives efficient and their focus clear. This can be difficult to accept at first, especially in a world that constantly promotes visible success. You may feel pressure to keep up, to show progress, to match the pace of others. But this is where clarity becomes essential. You must decide what you are actually building toward. Is it attention or is it freedom? Is it appearance or is it control? Because trying to pursue both often leads to conflict. When you redefine what rich means to you, you remove that conflict. Your decisions become aligned. You no longer feel the need to justify saving instead of spending. You no longer feel behind because someone else is displaying more. You understand that your path is different and that difference is intentional. You are building something that may not be immediately visible, but is far more durable. Another important aspect of this shift is learning to appreciate progress that cannot be seen. Growing savings, increasing investments, reducing dependency. These are not things that attract attention, but they are the true indicators of wealth. The silent millionaire tracks these quietly. They measure success by what is accumulating, not by what is being displayed. Over time, this new definition begins to shape your identity. You become someone who values substance over appearance, stability over excitement, and long-term freedom over short-term recognition. This identity is not fragile. It does not depend on external validation. It is built on understanding, discipline, and consistent action. You will also begin to notice a sense of calm that comes with this approach. When you are not trying to prove anything, there is less pressure. When your decisions are not driven by comparison, there is more clarity. You are no longer reacting to the world around you. You are building according to your own standards, and that creates a level of control that is both practical and psychological. Redefining what rich really means is not just a financial adjustment. It is a shift in perspective that affects how you live, how you think, and how you make decisions. It moves you away from chasing and toward building. It replaces noise with intention, and it aligns your actions with outcomes that actually matter. The silent millionaire does not need to look rich to feel successful. They understand that real wealth is not something you wear, it is something you build, quietly, consistently, and with purpose. Chapter 5. Master the discipline of delayed gratification. The ability to delay gratification is one of the most powerful skills you can develop, yet it is also one of the rarest. Everything around you is designed to reward immediacy. You can buy instantly, watch instantly, upgrade instantly, and feel a quick sense of satisfaction without waiting. But what feels good in the moment often comes at the cost of something far more valuable in the future. The silent millionaire understands this trade-off clearly. They are not against enjoyment, but they are deeply aware that timing matters more than desire. Delayed gratification is not about denying yourself forever. It is about choosing when and why you indulge. It is about understanding that every decision has a consequence and that short-term pleasure can either support or sabotage long-term growth. When you begin to see this clearly, your behavior starts to change. You no longer act on impulse alone. You pause, you think, and you decide based on where you want to be, not just how you feel in the moment. At first, this discipline can feel uncomfortable. You will notice how often the urge to spend appears, how quickly the mind tries to justify unnecessary purchases, and how easy it is to give in. This is not a sign of weakness, it is a reflection of conditioning. Most people have been trained to respond immediately to desire. Breaking that pattern requires awareness and repetition. Each time you choose to wait instead of react, you strengthen your control. The silent millionaire treats every financial decision as a moment of leverage. Instead of asking, "Do I want this?" they ask, "What does this cost me in the long run?" That question changes everything, because the true cost of a purchase is not just the money spent, it is the opportunity lost. It is what that money could have become if it had been invested, saved, or directed towards something that grows. When you begin to think this way, impulsive decisions start to lose their appeal. There is also a deeper layer to delayed gratification that goes beyond money. It is about building patience as a core part of your identity. It is about becoming someone who is comfortable waiting, someone who understands that meaningful results take time. This patience extends into every area of life. You stop rushing progress, you stop expecting immediate outcomes, and in doing so, you create space for things to develop properly. One of the most important shifts is learning to find satisfaction in the act of discipline itself. Instead of feeling deprived when you delay a purchase, you begin to feel empowered. You recognize that you are in control, that you are not being driven by impulse. This feeling of control becomes rewarding in its own way. It replaces the temporary satisfaction of spending with a more stable sense of confidence. It is also important to understand that delayed gratification is not about perfection. You will not always make the right decision. There will be moments where you give in, where you choose immediate pleasure over long-term benefit. But what matters is consistency over time. The goal is not to eliminate every impulse, but to reduce how often you act on it. Over time, those small improvements create a significant difference. The silent millionaire often operates with a simple principle: earn now, enjoy later, but enjoy more. They are willing to wait because they understand that waiting increases the quality of the reward. A purchase made after careful consideration feels different. A lifestyle built after years of discipline feels different. It is not just about having more, it is about appreciating more. This discipline also creates momentum. Each time you delay gratification, you free up resources that can be directed toward growth. Those resources begin to accumulate. They start working for you quietly and consistently, and as they grow, they make future decisions easier. Because the more you build, the less you feel the need to prove anything through spending. Another benefit of delayed gratification is clarity. When you give yourself time before making a decision, you begin to see things more objectively. What felt urgent in the moment often loses its importance after a few days. You realize that many desires are temporary, driven by emotion rather than necessity. This awareness helps you filter what truly matters from what simply feels appealing for a short time. Over time, this way of thinking becomes natural. You stop reacting quickly. You become more deliberate, more thoughtful, more controlled. Your decisions are no longer driven by urgency, but by intention. And that shift allows you to build something that is stable, not fragile. The world will continue to encourage speed, convenience, and instant satisfaction, but the silent millionaire moves differently. They understand that real wealth is not built in moments of indulgence, but in moments of restraint. They know that every time they choose the future over the present, they are strengthening their position. Mastering the discipline of delayed gratification is not about restriction, it is about alignment. It is about making sure your actions today support the life you want tomorrow. And when you do that consistently, you begin to create a life that does not need constant upgrading because it is already built on a strong foundation. In the end, the ability to wait is not a limitation, it is an advantage. It allows you to move with intention, to build with clarity, and to grow with patience. And in a world that is constantly rushing, that ability quietly sets you apart. Chapter 6. Design a life that looks modest but grows rich. There is a quiet strength in living a life that does not demand attention. It may not look impressive from the outside, but beneath the surface, it is structured, intentional, and steadily expanding. The silent millionaire understands that the goal is not to create a life that looks rich, but one that becomes rich over time, and those two paths often require very different decisions. A modest life is often misunderstood. It is not about limitation or lack. It is about control. It is about designing your lifestyle in a way that supports your long-term growth instead of competing with it. When your expenses are aligned with your priorities, you create space. Space to save, to invest, to think clearly, and to act without pressure. This space becomes one of your greatest advantages. Many people increase their lifestyle as soon as their income increases. A higher salary leads to a better apartment, a newer car, more frequent spending, and a constant need to maintain that level. On the surface, it feels like progress, but in reality, it often creates dependency. You become tied to a certain income level just to sustain your lifestyle, and that reduces your flexibility. It limits your options. It keeps you running. The silent millionaire takes a different approach. They separate income from lifestyle. When their income grows, they do not rush to upgrade everything around them. Instead, they direct a significant portion of that increase toward building assets. They understand that every upgrade has a hidden cost, not just in money, but in future obligations. And they choose carefully which upgrades truly add value and which simply create noise. Designing a modest life requires clarity. You need to know what actually matters to you and what does not. Without that clarity, it is easy to fall into default patterns, spending because others are spending, upgrading because it feels expected. But when you are clear about your priorities, your decisions become simpler. You stop chasing things that do not serve you, and you focus on what does. This does not mean you eliminate comfort or enjoyment. It means you become intentional about them. You choose quality over quantity. You invest in things that genuinely improve your life, rather than things that temporarily impress others. A modest life can still be a comfortable life, even an enjoyable one. The difference is that it is built with purpose, not impulse. One of the most powerful aspects of a modest lifestyle is that it reduces pressure. When your expenses are controlled, you are not constantly forced to earn more just to keep up. You gain breathing room. You can make decisions based on opportunity rather than necessity. You can take calculated risks. You can think long-term. This flexibility is a form of wealth in itself. There is also a psychological benefit. When you are not trying to maintain an image, there is less stress. You are not comparing constantly. You are not worried about how things look. You are focused on how things function. This shift creates a sense of calm. You move through life with more clarity because your decisions are aligned with your goals. At first, living modestly in a world that celebrates excess may feel unusual. You may notice the contrast between your choices and those of others. There may even be moments where you question whether you are missing out. But over time, as your financial position strengthens, that doubt fades. You begin to see the results of your discipline. You begin to feel the stability you are building, and that replaces any temporary desire to impress. The silent millionaire does not reject luxury. They simply delay it and define it differently. For them, true luxury is not just what you can buy, but what you can afford without stress. It is the ability to live comfortably without being dependent on constant income. It is the freedom to make choices without financial pressure. These are forms of luxury that cannot always be seen, but they are deeply valuable. As your wealth grows quietly in the background, your life may continue to look simple on the surface, but that simplicity is intentional. It protects your progress. It keeps your focus clear. It allows your resources to compound without interruption, and over time it creates a foundation that is far stronger than any outward display. Designing a life that looks modest but grows rich is not about sacrifice, it is about strategy. It is about understanding that what you keep matters more than what you show. It is about building a structure that supports your future rather than competing with it. And it is about trusting that quiet growth sustained over time leads to outcomes that are both meaningful and lasting. In the end, the goal is not to appear wealthy, the goal is to become it, quietly, steadily, and without unnecessary attention. And a modest life built with intention is one of the most powerful ways to get there. Chapter 7. Escape the trap of lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is subtle. It does not arrive as a sudden decision, but as a series of small upgrades that feel justified in the moment. You earn a little more, so you spend a little more. Your standards rise, your habits adjust, and slowly your new level of spending becomes normal. What once felt like a luxury becomes an expectation, and without realizing it, you are running faster just to stay in the same place. This is the trap. It creates the illusion of progress while quietly preventing real growth. Your income increases, but your financial position does not improve in a meaningful way. You may feel more comfortable, but you are not more free. You are simply maintaining a more expensive version of the same cycle, earning, spending, and repeating. The silent millionaire is highly aware of this pattern and actively resists it. They understand that income growth is an opportunity, not a signal to upgrade everything around them. Instead of asking, "What can I afford now?" they ask, "What can I build now?" This shift in thinking changes how every increase in income is used. Rather than expanding their lifestyle immediately, they expand their capacity to accumulate. One of the most important distinctions to understand is the difference between necessary improvement and unnecessary expansion. Not all upgrades are bad. Improving your living conditions, investing in tools that enhance your productivity, or spending on experiences that genuinely enrich your life can all be valuable. But lifestyle inflation is not about thoughtful improvement, it is about automatic expansion. It is spending more simply because you can, without considering whether it truly adds value. Escaping this trap requires awareness and intention. You must become conscious of how your spending evolves as your income changes. Without that awareness, lifestyle inflation happens naturally. It is the default path. But once you see it clearly, you can begin to make different choices. You can decide which upgrades are meaningful and which are unnecessary. You can separate your needs from your impulses. Another powerful strategy is to create a gap between income growth and lifestyle change. When your income increases, resist the urge to adjust your lifestyle immediately. Give yourself time. Allow that additional income to accumulate, to be saved or invested, to strengthen your position. Over time, this gap becomes a source of momentum. It allows your wealth to grow faster than your expenses, which is the opposite of what happens in the inflation cycle. The silent millionaire often follows a simple principle: increase your assets before you increase your lifestyle. This ensures that every improvement in your life is supported by a stronger foundation. Instead of relying solely on your current income, you begin to build systems that generate income independently. And once those systems are in place, lifestyle upgrades become sustainable rather than fragile. There is also a psychological aspect to lifestyle inflation that is worth understanding. As your environment improves, your perception adjusts. What once felt sufficient may start to feel inadequate. This is not because your needs have changed, but because your expectations have. The mind quickly adapts to new standards and begins to seek more. Recognizing this pattern helps you stay grounded. It reminds you that satisfaction does not come from constant upgrading, but from clarity and control. Comparison plays a major role here as well. When you see others upgrading their lives, it can create pressure to do the same. You may feel like you are falling behind if you do not keep up. But this is where the silent millionaire separates themselves. They do not measure progress by external standards. They focus on their own trajectory. They understand that what matters is not how their life looks compared to others, but how it functions in supporting their long-term goals. Living below your means, especially as your income grows, requires discipline. It requires you to resist social pressure, internal impulses, and the constant messaging that more is always better. But this discipline creates freedom. It allows you to build a financial buffer, to invest consistently, and to move forward without being weighed down by unnecessary expenses. Over time, the benefits become clear. While others are stuck maintaining increasingly expensive lifestyles, you are building something that grows independently. Your money begins to work for you, your reliance on active income decreases, and your options expand. This is the true reward of escaping lifestyle inflation, not just more money but more control. The silent millionaire does not avoid enjoyment. They simply choose it carefully. They understand that not every increase in income needs to be reflected in visible upgrades. They prioritize stability over appearance, growth over consumption, and long-term freedom over short-term satisfaction. Escaping the trap of lifestyle inflation is not about restriction, it is about direction. It is about deciding where your money goes before it disappears into habits that do not serve you. It is about ensuring that your progress is real, not just visible. In the end, wealth is not determined by how much you earn, but by how much you keep and grow. And when you learn to control lifestyle inflation, you create a gap between those two numbers, a gap that widens over time and becomes the foundation of everything you are building. Chapter 8. Make boring decisions that win big. There is nothing exciting about the decisions that build real wealth. They do not come with adrenaline, they do not create instant stories, and they rarely attract attention. In fact, most of them feel repetitive, predictable, and almost too simple to matter. But this is exactly why they work. The silent millionaire understands that success is not built on occasional brilliance, but on consistent, often boring, decisions, repeated over time. The world tends to glorify big moves, sudden breakthroughs, risky bets, dramatic changes. These stories are easy to remember and exciting to talk about, but they are not reliable. They are rare, unpredictable, and often misunderstood. What is rarely highlighted is the quiet consistency behind lasting success. The daily choices that seem small on their own, but powerful when compounded. Boring decisions are not about lack of ambition, they are about clarity. They remove unnecessary complexity and focus on what consistently works. Saving a fixed percentage of your income, investing regularly without trying to time the market, avoiding unnecessary debt, living within your means. These are not exciting strategies, but they are effective. And their effectiveness increases over time, precisely because they are sustainable. One of the reasons people avoid boring decisions is because they underestimate the power of repetition. Doing something once rarely creates a noticeable change, but doing it consistently creates momentum. It builds structure. It turns effort into habit, and once a habit is established, it requires less energy to maintain. This is how small actions begin to produce large results. The silent millionaire does not chase constant optimization. They focus on consistency. They understand that trying to find the perfect strategy often leads to inaction or inconsistency. Instead of overthinking every decision, they choose a sound approach and stick to it. They trust the process. They allow time to do its work. This patience is what separates them from those who are always searching for something better, but never commit to anything long enough to see results. There is also a certain peace that comes with making simple, repeatable decisions. When your approach is clear, you do not have to constantly rethink your actions. You do not waste energy on unnecessary choices. You know what needs to be done, and you do it. This reduces mental fatigue and allows you to focus on execution rather than constant decision-making. Boring decisions also protect you from unnecessary risk. When you are not chasing excitement, you are less likely to make impulsive moves. You are less likely to be influenced by trends, hype, or external pressure. You remain grounded. You make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. And over time, this stability becomes one of your greatest strengths. It is important to understand that boring does not mean stagnant. Progress is still happening, even if it is not visible in dramatic ways. Your savings are growing, your investments are compounding, your discipline is strengthening. These changes may not feel exciting in the moment, but they are building something solid, something that does not rely on luck or timing, but on consistency. Another advantage of boring decisions is that they are accessible. You do not need special knowledge, perfect timing, or extraordinary talent to apply them. You simply need commitment. This makes them reliable. They do not depend on external conditions as much as they depend on your ability to follow through. Over time, you will begin to notice a shift. What once felt boring begins to feel normal, and what once felt exciting, impulsive spending, risky decisions, constant changes, starts to feel unnecessary. Your standards change, your priorities become clearer. You begin to value stability over stimulation, progress over novelty. The silent millionaire finds confidence in this simplicity. They are not concerned with impressing others with complex strategies or bold moves. They are focused on results. and they know that results come from doing the right things consistently, even when those things are not exciting. There may be moments where you feel tempted to break this pattern, to try something new, to chase a faster outcome, to seek a different path. This is natural, but it is important to recognize that consistency often feels slow, especially in the beginning. The results are not immediate. They take time to accumulate. But once they do, they accelerate in a way that is difficult to replicate with inconsistent effort. Making boring decisions requires trust. Trust in the process, trust in your discipline, and trust in the idea that small actions matter. It requires you to look beyond the immediate and focus on the long term, to understand that what feels insignificant today can become significant tomorrow. In the end, the difference between those who build wealth and those who struggle often comes down to this. One group is willing to do the same effective things over and over again, while the other is constantly searching for something new. One builds quietly, steadily, and consistently. The other moves unpredictably, driven by emotion and external influence. The silent millionaire chooses the first path, not because it is exciting, but because it works. They understand that wealth is not built through moments of intensity, but through years of consistency, and that consistency is often built on decisions that at first glance seem boring, but in reality win big. Chapter 9. Turn your income into a quiet machine. Income by itself is not wealth, it is potential. It is the raw material you are given, but what matters is what you do with it. Many people focus all their energy on increasing income, believing that earning more will automatically solve their financial problems. But without a system, more income often leads to more spending, more pressure, and more dependency. The silent millionaire understands that income must be structured, directed, and transformed into something that works beyond active effort. The goal is simple, but powerful. Turn your income into a quiet machine. A system that operates in the background, consistently building and growing without requiring constant attention. This machine does not rely on motivation or daily decisions. It runs on structure, discipline, and automation. And once it is in place, it begins to change your relationship with money entirely. The first step is to stop treating income as something that is fully available. Not every dollar you earn should be considered spendable. A portion must be redirected immediately before it ever reaches your day-to-day life. This is where the foundation of the machine begins. By separating a percentage of your income for saving and investing, you create a consistent flow into your wealth-building system. Automation plays a key role here. When decisions are left to willpower, they become inconsistent. You may save 1 month and spend the next. You may invest when you feel motivated and pause when you don't. But when the process is automated, it removes the need for constant decision-making. The system runs whether you feel like it or not, and that consistency is what creates results over time. Think of it this way: every time you receive income, a portion is quietly assigned to your future. It moves automatically, without hesitation, without negotiation. Over time, this creates a pattern, a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes a powerful force. It ensures that no matter what happens externally, you are always moving forward internally. The silent millionaire builds this machine early, even when the amounts are small, because the strength of the system is not determined by how much you put into it at the beginning, but by how consistently you feed it. As your income grows, the machine grows with it. The percentages remain, but the amounts increase. And because the system is already in place, there is no need to adjust your behavior each time your income changes. Another important element is direction. It is not enough to simply set money aside. It must be placed where it can grow, whether through investments, savings structures, or income-generating assets. The goal is to ensure that your money is not sitting idle. It should be working, expanding, and contributing to your long-term position. This is what transforms your income from a temporary resource into a lasting force. Over time, the machine begins to produce results. At first, they may be small. You may not notice a significant difference in your daily life. But beneath the surface, something is building. The system is gaining momentum, and as that momentum increases, the results begin to accelerate. What once felt slow begins to feel steady. What once felt small begins to feel meaningful. One of the most powerful aspects of this approach is that it reduces reliance on constant effort. When your income is your only source of progress, you are always tied to your work. You must keep earning to keep moving forward. But when your money begins to work for you, that dynamic changes. You create additional layers of growth that are not directly tied to your time, and that creates flexibility. The silent millionaire values this flexibility deeply. It is not just about having more money, it is about having more options. The ability to make decisions without being entirely dependent on your next paycheck. The ability to step back, to adjust, to explore opportunities without immediate financial pressure. This is what the quiet machine ultimately provides. It is also important to maintain simplicity. The machine does not need to be complex to be effective. In fact, complexity often leads to inconsistency. The goal is to create a system that is easy to follow, easy to maintain, and difficult to interrupt, something that becomes part of your routine rather than something you have to constantly manage. There will be moments where you are tempted to interfere with the system, to pause it, adjust it, or redirect it for short-term needs. While some flexibility is necessary, it is important to protect the core structure, because every interruption slows momentum, and momentum is one of the most valuable forces in building wealth. As time passes, you will begin to see the true value of turning your income into a quiet machine. It operates without noise, without attention, without constant effort, but it is always working, always building, always moving forward, and that consistency creates results that are difficult to achieve through isolated actions. In the end, the difference is not in how much you earn, but in how effectively you direct what you earn. Income is temporary, but systems are lasting. And when you build a system that works quietly in the background, you create a foundation that continues to grow, regardless of what is happening on the surface. The silent millionaire does not rely on bursts of effort or moments of opportunity. They rely on structure, on consistency, on systems that run quietly and powerfully over time. And once that machine is in place, everything else becomes easier. Because progress is no longer dependent on intention alone, it is built into the way you operate. Chapter 10. Build assets that speak for you. There comes a point in your journey where effort alone is no longer enough. You can work harder, earn more, and stay disciplined, but if all your progress depends on your constant involvement, you are still limited. Time becomes your ceiling, energy becomes your constraint, and no matter how committed you are, there are only so many hours you can trade. This is where the silent millionaire begins to shift focus from effort to ownership. Assets are what make that shift possible. They are the structures you build or acquire that continue to generate value even when you are not actively working. They do not need your constant attention, but they continue to grow, produce, and support your financial position, and over time, they begin to speak for you. Not through words or appearances, but through results. Most people are familiar with the idea of earning money, but fewer truly understand the importance of owning things that earn money. There is a difference between being paid for your time and owning something that produces income independently. One requires your presence, the other continues in your absence, and that distinction is what separates temporary income from lasting wealth. Building assets does not require immediate scale. It begins with small intentional steps. It could be investing in financial instruments, creating a system that generates consistent returns, or developing something that holds value over time. The form may vary, but the principle remains the same. You are creating something that works beyond your direct effort. The silent millionaire approaches this process with patience. They do not rush to build everything at once. They start with what they can manage, and they expand gradually. Each asset becomes a building block. Each one adds a layer of stability and growth. And over time, these layers form a structure that becomes increasingly difficult to disrupt. One of the most important shifts here is learning to think in terms of accumulation rather than consumption. Every decision becomes a question of direction. Does this move me closer to ownership, or does it simply provide temporary satisfaction? When you consistently choose ownership, you begin to build a foundation that supports you in ways that consumption never can. Assets also create distance between you and financial pressure. When your income comes solely from your active work, any disruption can have immediate consequences. But when you have assets generating value in the background, you create a buffer. You reduce your dependence on any single source, and that reduction in dependence increases your control. It is important to understand that not all assets are equal. Some require more attention, some carry more risk, and some grow more slowly than others. The goal is not to chase complexity, but to build a balanced structure, one that aligns with your understanding, your tolerance, and your long-term vision. The silent millionaire does not rush into what they do not understand. They build deliberately, with clarity. Another key element is consistency. Assets do not appear overnight. They are built over time through repeated action and disciplined investment. There will be periods where progress feels slow, where results are not immediately visible, but beneath the surface, growth is happening, value is being created, and as that value compounds, the pace begins to change. There is also a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your assets are working for you. Even when you are not actively earning, something is still moving forward. This changes how you think, how you plan, and how you make decisions. You are no longer relying solely on what you can do today. You are supported by what you have built over time. The silent millionaire does not seek attention for what they own. Their assets are not meant to impress, they are meant to function. They operate quietly, without display. They grow steadily, without noise, and because they are not built for appearance, they are more stable. They are designed to last, not to be noticed. As your assets grow, they begin to create options. You gain the ability to make choices that are not driven by immediate financial need. You can take opportunities, step back when necessary, and move with greater flexibility. This is one of the most valuable outcomes of building assets, not just increased income, but increased freedom. It is also worth noting that building assets requires restraint. It requires you to direct resources away from immediate consumption and toward long-term growth. This is not always easy, especially in a world that encourages spending, but each time you make that choice, you are strengthening your position. You are building something that continues to serve you long after the moment has passed. Over time, your assets begin to represent your discipline. They reflect your decisions, your patience, and your consistency. They become a quiet record of what you have built. And unlike visible displays of wealth, they do not fade quickly. They endure, they expand, they continue to work. The silent millionaire understands that true progress is not measured by how busy you are, but by how much you have built that continues without you. They focus on creating structures that last, systems that grow, and assets that speak through their performance. In the end, building assets is about shifting from being the sole driver of your progress to becoming the architect of it. It is about creating something that carries your effort forward, even when you are not actively pushing. And when you reach that point, your wealth is no longer dependent on constant motion. It is supported by what you have quietly built along the way. Chapter 11. Learn to move without attention. Attention is often mistaken for progress. It feels validating to be noticed, to have others recognize what you are doing, to receive feedback, reactions, and acknowledgement. But attention can be distracting. It can pull you away from the work itself and redirect your focus toward how that work is being perceived. Over time, this shift becomes costly. You begin to adjust your actions based on visibility rather than effectiveness, and that is where momentum starts to weaken. The silent millionaire understands that attention is not required for growth. In fact, it often interferes with it. When you move without attention, you remove a layer of pressure. You are no longer performing, you are no longer explaining, you are simply building, and that simplicity allows for deeper focus and more consistent execution. Moving without attention begins with a change in mindset. You stop asking, "Who will see this?" and start asking, "Does this move me forward?" That question brings clarity. It removes unnecessary considerations and directs your energy toward what actually matters. You become less concerned with timing your actions for visibility and more concerned with aligning them with your long-term goals. There is also a level of protection that comes with operating quietly. When your plans are not constantly exposed, they are less vulnerable to outside influence. You are not pulled in different directions by opinions, expectations, or reactions. You have the space to think clearly, to make adjustments, and to refine your approach without interruption. This space is often where the most meaningful progress happens. The world tends to reward visibility. It highlights those who share, those who display, those who broadcast their journey, and while there is nothing inherently wrong with being visible, it is not a requirement for success. Many of the strongest foundations are built without being seen. They are developed quietly, strengthened over time, and only become visible when they are solid. The silent millionaire values this phase. They understand that early attention can create pressure to maintain an image rather than build substance. It can lead to rushed decisions, premature exposure, and a focus on appearance rather than structure. By delaying attention, they give themselves the opportunity to build something real, something that can withstand scrutiny when it eventually comes. Moving without attention also strengthens discipline. When no one is watching, your actions are guided entirely by your own standards. There is no external accountability, no immediate recognition. It is just you and your commitment. This is where true consistency is formed, because when you can follow through without being seen, your behavior becomes reliable. It is no longer dependent on external factors. There will be moments where the lack of attention feels uncomfortable. You may feel unnoticed, even overlooked. But this is part of the process. It is the period where you are building internally, where your focus is directed inward rather than outward. And while it may not feel rewarding in the moment, it is preparing you for a level of stability that attention alone cannot provide. Another important aspect is learning to separate feedback from noise. Not all input is valuable. Some opinions are based on limited understanding, others on comparison, and many on personal bias. When you are constantly exposed to this, it becomes difficult to maintain clarity. But when you limit attention, you also limit noise. You create a more controlled environment where your decisions are based on your own reasoning rather than external influence. The silent millionaire is not against recognition. They simply do not depend on it. When attention comes, it is a byproduct, not a goal. It reflects what has already been built, rather than driving what is being built. This distinction keeps their focus grounded. They are not chasing visibility, they are allowing it to follow naturally. Over time, moving without attention becomes a habit. You stop feeling the need to announce every step, to share every detail, to seek constant feedback. You become more comfortable with quiet progress. You begin to trust your process, and that trust allows you to move with greater confidence, even when no one is watching. There is also a certain strength in knowing that your progress is real, regardless of who sees it. It creates a sense of independence. You are not waiting for validation to continue. You are not adjusting your pace based on reactions. You are building because you have decided to, not because it will be noticed. As your foundation grows, there may come a time when your work naturally becomes visible, but by then, it will be supported by substance. It will not need to rely on perception, because it will stand on its own, and that is the difference between visibility that is earned and visibility that is forced. The silent millionaire chooses to move without attention because it allows for deeper focus, stronger discipline, and more stable growth. It removes distractions, protects intentions, and creates an environment where real progress can take place. In the end, attention is temporary, it comes and goes, but what you build in its absence has the potential to last, and when your focus is on what lasts, you begin to move in a way that is quieter, more deliberate, and far more effective. Chapter 12. Think in decades, not days. Short-term thinking is one of the most common reasons people struggle to build lasting wealth. It shapes decisions around immediacy, what feels good now, what looks good now, what produces quick results. But wealth does not respond to urgency, it responds to time, consistency, and patience. The silent millionaire understands this deeply. They do not measure progress by days or even months. They think in decades. When you begin to think in decades, your perspective changes. Decisions that once felt important lose their urgency. Small setbacks no longer feel significant. You stop reacting to short-term fluctuations and start focusing on long-term direction. This shift creates stability. It allows you to move forward without being constantly distracted by temporary outcomes. Most people underestimate the power of time. They expect results too quickly, and when those results do not appear, they lose confidence or change direction. This creates a cycle of inconsistency. They start, stop, adjust, and restart, never allowing any single approach to fully develop. The silent millionaire avoids this pattern by committing to a longer horizon. They understand that meaningful results require time to compound. Compounding is one of the most powerful forces in wealth building, but it only works when given enough time. Small, consistent actions begin to build upon each other. Growth accelerates, not because of sudden change, but because of accumulated progress. What starts slowly eventually gains momentum, but this only happens when you remain consistent long enough to experience it. Thinking in decades also changes how you handle challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as failures, you begin to see them as part of the process. You understand that setbacks are temporary, but the direction you are moving in is what truly matters. This mindset reduces emotional reactions. You are less likely to make impulsive decisions based on short-term discomfort. The silent millionaire approaches decisions with a long-term filter. They ask themselves, how will this choice affect me 5, 10, or 20 years from now? This question brings clarity. It helps you prioritize what truly matters and avoid actions that provide immediate satisfaction but long-term consequences. It aligns your behavior with outcomes that extend beyond the present moment. There is also a sense of patience that develops when you adopt this perspective. You no longer feel the need to rush. You understand that progress is being made, even if it is not immediately visible. This patience allows you to stay consistent, to continue building without constant validation, and that consistency is what creates results over time. Another important benefit is that long-term thinking reduces the impact of external noise. Markets fluctuate, trends change, opinions shift. When your focus is short-term, these changes can feel overwhelming, but when you are thinking in decades, they become less significant. You are not reacting to every movement. You are staying aligned with your overall direction. This does not mean you ignore the present. It means you use the present to serve the future. Each decision you make today is a building block, and when those blocks are placed consistently over time, they create a structure that is both stable and strong. The silent millionaire understands that today's actions are not isolated, they are part of a larger timeline. There will be moments where progress feels slow, where results seem distant, where the effort you are putting in does not appear to match the outcome. This is where long-term thinking becomes essential. It reminds you that growth is not always linear. There are periods of accumulation, followed by periods of acceleration, but without the initial accumulation, acceleration cannot occur. Thinking in decades also encourages better decision-making. You become more selective, you avoid unnecessary risks, you focus on strategies that are sustainable rather than those that promise quick results. This selectivity protects your progress. It ensures that what you build is not easily undone. The silent millionaire is not in a hurry. They are focused. They are deliberate. They understand that the goal is not to achieve something quickly, but to build something that lasts. And building something that lasts requires time, patience, and consistent effort. Over time, this way of thinking becomes natural. You stop measuring success by immediate outcomes. You begin to appreciate the process itself. You find satisfaction in consistency, in discipline, in knowing that you are moving in the right direction, and that satisfaction becomes a source of motivation. As you continue on this path, you will begin to see the results of your patience. What once felt slow will start to feel steady. What once felt uncertain will start to feel secure. And what once seemed distant will begin to take shape. In the end, wealth is not built in a day. It is built over years of consistent action, guided by a long-term vision. When you think in decades, you give yourself the time required for that vision to become reality. The silent millionaire does not chase quick wins. They build lasting systems. They do not rush progress. They allow it to develop, and by doing so, they create something that is not only successful, but sustainable. Because when you learn to think in decades, you stop reacting to time and start using it to your advantage. Chapter 13. Protect what you build quietly. Building wealth is only part of the journey. Protecting it is what determines whether it lasts. Many people focus intensely on earning and accumulating, but give far less attention to preserving what they have created. As a result, progress that took years to build can be undone in a short period of time. The silent millionaire understands that growth and protection must go hand in hand. What you build quietly must also be protected quietly. Protection begins with awareness. You must recognize that every asset, every system, and every layer of progress you create is exposed to some level of risk. Markets change, circumstances shift, unexpected events occur. None of these can be fully controlled, but they can be prepared for. The goal is not to eliminate risk entirely, that is impossible, but to manage it in a way that prevents significant loss. One of the most important principles here is diversification. Relying too heavily on a single source of income or a single type of asset creates vulnerability. If that one source is disrupted, everything else is affected. The silent millionaire avoids this by spreading their exposure. They build multiple streams, multiple layers, multiple supports. Each one may not be large on its own, but together they create stability. Protection also involves restraint. Just as you were disciplined in building, you must remain disciplined in maintaining. There will be opportunities that appear attractive but carry unnecessary risk. There will be moments where you are tempted to stretch beyond your limits in pursuit of faster growth. But the silent millionaire knows that not every opportunity needs to be taken. Preserving what you have is often more valuable than chasing what you do not yet have. Another critical aspect is maintaining a margin of safety. This means creating buffers, financial, emotional, and strategic, that protect you from unexpected shocks. Savings that can support you during difficult periods, investments that are not overly exposed, decisions that leave room for adjustment. These buffers may not seem exciting, but they are essential. They allow you to remain stable when others are forced to react. Privacy plays a role in protection as well. The more visible your progress, the more attention it attracts. And attention can bring complications, expectations, pressure, and sometimes unwanted interference. The silent millionaire keeps their structure discreet, not out of fear, but out of strategy. By limiting exposure, they reduce unnecessary risk and maintain control over their environment. There is also a behavioral aspect to protection. Emotional decisions can be as damaging as external events. Acting out of fear, greed, or urgency often leads to mistakes. Selling too quickly, buying without clarity, reacting to short-term fluctuations, these are common patterns that can erode progress. The silent millionaire develops the discipline to remain calm. They do not react immediately. They assess, they think, and they act with intention. Over time, protecting your wealth becomes a habit, just like building it. You begin to evaluate decisions not only by their potential gain, but also by their potential downside. You consider what could go wrong, not out of pessimism, but out of preparation. This balanced perspective allows you to move forward with confidence, knowing that your foundation is secure. It is also important to review and adjust your structure periodically. Protection is not a one-time action. As your assets grow and your situation evolves, your strategies must adapt. What worked at one stage may not be sufficient at another. The silent millionaire stays aware of these changes and makes adjustments quietly, without unnecessary disruption. Another layer of protection is understanding your limits. Not every strategy suits every individual. Your tolerance for risk, your level of knowledge, and your long-term goals all play a role in determining what is appropriate for you. The silent millionaire does not follow trends blindly. They operate within their understanding. They build in areas where they have clarity, and they avoid what they do not fully comprehend. There is a certain calm that comes from knowing what you have built is secure. It allows you to think clearly, to act deliberately, and to continue building without constant concern. This calm is not accidental. It is the result of preparation, discipline, and thoughtful decisions made over time. Protecting what you build quietly also means resisting the urge to constantly interfere. Not every fluctuation requires action. Not every change requires adjustment. Sometimes the best decision is to stay consistent, to allow your structure to function as intended. Overmanaging can be just as harmful as neglect. The silent millionaire understands that wealth is not just about growth, it is about preservation. It is about ensuring that what you have built continues to serve you, not just today but in the future. This requires a different kind of discipline, a quieter, more measured approach, one that values stability as much as progress. In the end, building wealth without protecting it is incomplete. It is like constructing something without reinforcing it. It may stand for a time, but it remains vulnerable. Protection gives your efforts durability. It ensures that your progress is not temporary, but lasting. And when you learn to protect what you build with the same care and intention you used to create it, you move from simply accumulating wealth to truly sustaining it, quietly, steadily, and with control. Chapter 14. Multiply in silence, not in spotlight. Growth becomes different once you have something to build on. In the beginning, your focus is on creating structure, saving, investing, developing discipline, and building your first layers of stability. But as those layers begin to take shape, a new phase emerges. It is no longer just about building, it is about multiplying, and how you approach this phase determines whether your progress accelerates or becomes exposed to unnecessary risk. The silent millionaire understands that multiplication must be handled with the same quiet discipline as accumulation. Just because something is growing does not mean it needs to be displayed. In fact, the more something grows, the more carefully it should be managed. Visibility can attract attention, and attention can disrupt focus. This is why multiplication is most powerful when it happens without unnecessary spotlight. There is a natural temptation to share progress when it becomes noticeable. After years of quiet effort, results begin to appear, your position strengthens, your assets grow, your confidence increases, and with that comes the urge to express it, to show that the effort has paid off. But the silent millionaire resists this impulse. They understand that visibility does not enhance growth, it often complicates it. Multiplying in silence allows you to stay focused on what actually matters. Instead of dividing your attention between building and presenting, you remain fully engaged in the process. Your decisions are guided by logic, not by how they will be perceived. You are not influenced by the expectations that often come with visible success. You are simply continuing what has already been working. Another important aspect of this phase is reinvestment. Growth accelerates when you allow your returns to remain within your system. Instead of extracting value prematurely, you direct it back into your structure. This creates a cycle where each layer supports the next. Your assets begin to build upon themselves, and the pace of progress increases without requiring proportional effort. The silent millionaire sees multiplication as a continuation of discipline, not a shift away from it. Just because there is more does not mean the principles change. In fact, they become even more important. Consistency, patience, and restraint are what allow growth to continue without disruption. Without these, expansion can become unstable. There is also a strategic advantage to remaining unnoticed during this phase. When your growth is not visible, you avoid unnecessary pressure. There are no expectations to meet, no comparisons to respond to, no need to maintain an image. This freedom allows you to make better decisions. You can take your time, evaluate opportunities carefully, and move at a pace that aligns with your goals. Multiplication also requires selectivity. Not every opportunity that appears during this stage should be taken. As your resources increase, so do your options. But more options do not always mean better outcomes. The silent millionaire becomes more selective, not less. They focus on what aligns with their long-term vision and ignore what does not, even if it appears attractive in the short term. Another key element is maintaining balance. Rapid growth can create instability if it is not supported by a strong foundation. Expanding too quickly, taking on too much risk, or overextending your resources can undo years of progress. The silent millionaire grows steadily. They ensure that each new layer is supported before adding the next. This approach may feel slower, but it is far more sustainable. There is also a psychological shift that occurs during this phase. As your wealth grows, your confidence increases. But this confidence must be managed carefully. It should be grounded in discipline, not in ego. Overconfidence can lead to careless decisions, unnecessary risks, and a loss of focus. The silent millionaire remains grounded. They continue to operate with the same principles that brought them to this point. Multiplying in silence also reinforces your independence. You are not relying on external validation to confirm your progress. You are not measuring success by visibility. You are focused on outcomes that are real, not perceived. This independence allows you to stay consistent even when there is no recognition. Over time, the effects of quiet multiplication become significant. What once required effort begins to generate results more easily. Your systems strengthen, your assets expand, Your position becomes more secure, and all of this happens without the need for constant attention or display. The silent millionaire understands that the goal is not just to grow, but to grow in a way that is stable, controlled, and sustainable. They do not rush to reveal what they are building. They allow it to develop fully before it becomes visible, and even then they remain focused on what comes next, rather than what has already been achieved. In the end, multiplication is not about speed, it is about structure. It is about allowing what you have built to expand naturally without interference. It is about maintaining discipline even as your resources increase. And it is about understanding that the most powerful growth often happens quietly, away from the spotlight, because when you multiply in silence, you protect your focus, preserve your discipline, and allow your progress to reach a level that does not need to be announced. It simply becomes evident over time through the strength of what you have built. Chapter 15. Become unrecognizable through consistency. Transformation rarely happens in a single moment. It is not a sudden shift, a dramatic breakthrough, or a visible turning point that changes everything at once. Real transformation is quieter than that. It happens gradually, through repeated actions that seem small in the moment but powerful over time. The silent millionaire understands that becoming someone new is not about intensity, it is about consistency. At the beginning of this journey, the changes you make may feel insignificant. Saving a little more, spending a little less, thinking a little differently. These actions do not attract attention, they do not create immediate results, but they begin to reshape your habits, and your habits over time begin to reshape you. This is how transformation begins, quietly, almost invisibly. Consistency is what gives these actions their power. Anyone can make a good decision once. Anyone can feel motivated for a short period. But lasting change comes from repetition, from doing the same disciplined things over and over again, even when there is no immediate reward, even when it feels slow, even when no one is watching. The silent millionaire does not rely on motivation, they rely on structure. They build routines that support their goals, systems that guide their behavior, and environments that reduce friction. This removes the need to constantly decide what to do. The path becomes clear, and the focus shifts to following it consistently. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The actions that once required effort start to feel natural. The discipline that once felt forced becomes part of your identity. You no longer have to convince yourself to act, you simply do. This is where the real shift occurs, not when your results change, but when your identity changes. Becoming unrecognizable is not about external appearance. It is about internal alignment. It is about becoming someone who thinks differently, acts differently, and makes decisions based on long-term clarity rather than short-term emotion. This change may not be immediately visible to others, but it is deeply felt within you. There will be moments where progress feels slow, where the gap between effort and result seems wide. This is where consistency becomes most important, because it is during these periods that most people stop. They lose patience. They look for faster paths. They break the pattern before it has time to work. The silent millionaire continues. They understand that progress is not always visible in the moment, but it is always building beneath the surface. Consistency also builds trust in yourself. Each time you follow through on what you said you would do, you reinforce that trust. You prove to yourself that your actions are reliable, and this self-trust becomes one of your greatest assets. It strengthens your confidence, not through words, but through evidence. Another important aspect of this transformation is that it compounds. Just like money, consistent actions build upon each other. Small improvements lead to larger ones. Simple habits lead to stronger discipline, and over time, the difference between where you started and where you are becomes significant. The silent millionaire does not seek recognition for this transformation. They do not need others to notice the change, because the real reward is not in being seen, it is in becoming. It is in knowing that you have built something within yourself that cannot be easily undone. As your identity evolves, your decisions begin to reflect that change. You naturally choose what aligns with your long-term goals. You avoid what does not. You become more selective, more deliberate, more focused. This alignment reduces internal conflict. You are no longer trying to force yourself to act differently. You are acting in a way that feels consistent with who you have become. There is also a quiet confidence that develops through consistency. It is not loud or attention-seeking. It is steady, grounded, and resilient. It comes from knowing that you can rely on yourself, that your progress is real, and that your direction is clear. This confidence does not fluctuate based on external validation. It is built internally, through repeated action. Becoming unrecognizable also means letting go of your old patterns. The habits, thoughts, and behaviors that once defined you begin to fade. They are replaced by new ones that support your growth. This is not always easy. There may be moments of resistance, moments where you feel pulled back toward familiar habits, but consistency helps you move through those moments. It keeps you aligned with your new direction. Over time, the results of this transformation become visible, not just in your financial position, but in your mindset, your behavior, and your overall approach to life. You become someone who operates with clarity, discipline, and control, someone who builds quietly, moves deliberately, and grows consistently. And when you look back, the change is undeniable. You are no longer the same person who started this journey, not because of a single moment, but because of thousands of small decisions made consistently over time. The silent millionaire does not chase transformation. They build it, day by day, action by action. They understand that the most powerful change is not immediate. It is gradual, steady, and lasting. In the end, becoming unrecognizable is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming the version of yourself that your consistent actions have been shaping all along. Quietly, patiently, and with purpose. Conclusion. Wealth, when built the right way, does not arrive with noise. It does not demand attention, nor does it need constant recognition to feel real. It grows quietly, beneath the surface, through decisions that are often invisible to others, but deeply meaningful to you. And by the time it becomes visible, it is no longer fragile. It is structured, stable, and sustained. Throughout this journey, you have seen that the path of the silent millionaire is not built on shortcuts or sudden breakthroughs. It is built on clarity, discipline, and patience. It begins with controlling what you say and what you do, choosing action over announcement, and learning to move without the need to be seen. It continues with small, deliberate steps, building your first invisible dollar, mastering delayed gratification, and designing a life that supports your future rather than competes with it. You have learned that real progress often feels simple, even repetitive, that the decisions that matter most are not always exciting, but they are consistent. That turning your income into a quiet machine, building assets that work without you, and thinking in decades rather than days are what create lasting change. And most importantly, you have seen that protecting what you build is just as important as building it in the first place. But beyond the strategies, there is something deeper that ties all of this together. It is identity. Because in the end, wealth is not just something you have, it is something you become aligned with. It reflects how you think, how you act, and how you make decisions when no one is watching. The silent millionaire is not defined by what they show, but by how they operate. This path is not always easy. There will be moments where you feel the pull of distraction, the pressure to keep up, the urge to speed things up or make things visible. But every time you choose discipline over impulse, patience over urgency, and structure over noise, you strengthen your position. You move further away from the cycle and closer to control, and that is what this journey is truly about: control. Control over your decisions, your time, your direction, and your future, not in a rigid or restrictive way, but in a way that gives you freedom. The freedom to choose, to adjust, to live without constant pressure. The kind of freedom that cannot be seen immediately, but is deeply felt over time. You do not need to prove anything to anyone to build this life. You do not need to announce your plans or display your progress. The work you do quietly is enough. In fact, it is more than enough, because what you are building is not meant for attention. It is meant for stability, growth, and long-term impact. As you move forward, remember that this is not a race. There is no need to rush. The strength of this path lies in its consistency, in showing up, day after day, making decisions that align with your future, in trusting that even when progress feels slow, it is still happening, because it is. One day the results will become clear, not because you tried to show them, but because they can no longer be hidden. Your life will reflect the discipline you practiced, the patience you maintained, and the structure you built. And by that time, you will realize something important. You are no longer chasing wealth. You are living it. The silent millionaire does not need recognition to feel successful. They do not rely on noise to validate their progress. They understand that the most powerful growth happens quietly, over time, through consistent action. And now, that path is yours. Continue building. Continue moving in silence. Continue becoming, because the life you are creating does not need to be loud to be extraordinary.